HPV is now?
Not really.
If you were at school 10 years ago, you might remember the introduction of the HPV vaccine and seeing a video like this.
Being immunised now means it's less likely you'll get cervical cancer later.
Or you might remember the 3 injections you or other girls got. But even though over 320,000 people have been immunised, there's still some confusion over what this vaccine is, why it's important, and the effect it will have.
I just remember, I remember my teacher coming in and being like, oh, you're going to get 3 injections, and we didn't really get told what it was for. She's like, it's to protect you against something, but there wasn't much information.
Of course, we were so young, so I didn't really know much about it. I had no idea what a cervix was, no idea what sex was or anything at all. So we were all watching this video so confused, but interested, of course.
The first bit of confusion is about what the vaccine was for. Was it against HPV? And what is that? Was it cervical cancer? Well, HPV, or the human papillomavirus, is the most commonly sexually transmitted infection in the world. Before the widespread adoption of the HPV vaccine 10 years ago, it was estimated that 11% of women in the world carried the HPV virus. And just 2 strains of HPV account for 76% of cervical cancer in New Zealand. It's also linked to 60 to 90% of vulva, vagina, penis, anus, mouth and throat cancers. In fact, it's estimated that HPV is responsible for 4.5% of cancer cases worldwide. That's why the HPV vaccine was introduced to New Zealand schools 10 years ago. But that wasn't super clear to everyone, and so if you were at school at the time, you might remember a lot of confusion and gossip.
I just remember we didn't really talk about it at home because it was just kind of I knew it was something along the lines of STDs, but yeah, because it's culturally it's rule, don't talk about it.
I just remember it was just a vaccine that we needed to get. I knew it was cancer, but I didn't know how it was transmitted.
As a result, only about 50% of the women eligible when the vaccine was introduced to schools ended up getting it. Olivia Byrne didn't get the vaccine at school. She has since gone on to become an immunologist who studies cancer vaccines at the Malaghan Institute of Medical Research.
I was about 13 or 14 when the HPV vaccine was introduced in New Zealand, but I actually didn't get the vaccine at high school. Talking to my mum, not totally sure why, but I think it was because of just a lot of lack of information about the vaccine. I think what I do remember most is that there actually wasn't very many conversations about it at my school. We didn't sit down with anyone and have anyone explain how the vaccine works, how it's designed, that it's to a synthetic peptide, that you can't get the HPV virus from this vaccine, you're not going to get cervical cancer from this vaccine. I think if we'd had that discussion and we'd been informed on how it would work and how the immune system creates the response against this virus, then it would have been a no-brainer to be vaccinated earlier. And that's what I learned at university, and that is why I then went and made sure I got myself vaccinated, because it seemed like a must-do to look after my own health as a preventative option.
There's been a significant uptick in the adoption rate of the vaccine in the decade since it was introduced. Of women born in 2004, one of the most recent age groups to have been through the 3-dose cycle, 68% were fully immunised. A study of this vaccine across 14 countries found that it had decreased the prevalence of the most common cancer-related strains of HPV by 83% in teenaged women.
Because it's quite a success story, this vaccine, and even after the 10 years since it was implemented, we've seen staggering results so far. I know they go into classrooms and they actually teach a little bit about how the vaccine works, and it's linked to cervical cancer, and there's obviously a lot more information about the positive sides of it online now that parents have at the click of a button. So just more education around the vaccines.
Because even now I don't know anything. I feel like it should be something taught throughout school rather than once before you get it, when you're way too young to understand. It needs to be continuously talked about.